It's a normal day as Lei goes to the supermarket to buy some supplies. Everything is going as usual, until portals suddenly appear out of nowhere and monsters pour out of them. The goblins begin to immediately kill the supermarket customers, leaving no one alive. Fortunately, he finds a machete and fights back. Thanks to his experience as a mercenary, he easily takes out a few goblins, gathering the terrified survivors, arming them with whatever he can find, and leading them against the incoming goblins. At first, everything goes well, but then people start to get tired, and the wave of goblins is relentless. Soon, the army arrives, and with their firearms, they help him eliminate the remaining monsters. Just then, a system window appears before him with a notification that the game is restarting. As Lei tries to understand what it means, the portal flashes again, and a huge orc emerges from it. Le and the soldiers open fire, but the bullets are useless. The orc is immune to firearms. Then, one of the survivors who was trembling in fear moments earlier, rushes forward and fells the orc with a single axe swing, claiming its weak point is the legs. Le can't understand what's happening. How could that guy, who was shaking at the sight of a mere goblin, suddenly become so strong and confident? Soon, all the other survivors show the same change, becoming seasoned monster hunters. But strangely, the changes affect everyone, except for our hero. Suddenly, he receives a system notification that explains everything. Due to a system failure, his regression has failed. Everyone else has regressed from the future and knows all about the monsters and has years of combat experience. At that moment, Lei realizes he's completely out of his depth, but before he can process it, another notification pops up. The system has granted him a special, unique skill as compensation. It's the butterfly effect, level 1, granted because he did not regress. Every action he takes that changes the future will now grant him bonus points. Lei looks at the words and understands. The butterfly effect means that even the smallest action can cause a storm on the other side of the world. More orcs pour out of the rift, and the players rush in to fight. Le fires his gun while assessing the battle with his new player status. He can now see each monster's name and level above its head. His bullets only leave slight burn marks, proving useless against the orc's thick hide. Melee weapons work better, since the regressors already know their weak points. Realizing this, he returns the firearm and grabs an axe. The system rewards him with a bonus point, showing that his new decisions alter the future. When an orc charges, he throws the axe at its knee and finishes it off with a clean strike. Another point appears. Kim watches and explains that in the past, he had used a chainsaw instead of an axe. Le smiles, understanding that every different choice creates a new future. Chin then tells him that he once killed 3 orcs using paint thinner. Lilo remembers it as a flammable chemical and decides to try it. The butterfly effect activates again, granting him more points. He sprays the orcs with thinner, sets them on fire, and watches as the flames consume them. The system awards him several extra points, and a growing confidence fills him. A message appears announcing his brave newbie achievement, and grants him a new skill called armor. A green aura hardens his body, stunning everyone around him. Kim curses in frustration, and another player complains that Lee always gets that power. Le realizes it must be the same skill he had before, since the butterfly effect didn't activate. As the rift begins to tremble again, everyone turns toward it, bracing for whatever comes next. Le positions himself in front of the rift as a system window appears, naming it a goblin and orc dungeon with low difficulty. He studies the screen and realizes that this game seems designed to wipe out humanity. Each dungeon contains a set number of monsters that eventually come out of the gates, and closing a gate is the only way to stop it. He turns to the players and urges them to clear the dungeon quickly. He remembers that difficulty affects rewards and skill quality, but he's not after the loot. He wants to test his new armor skill and the stats he gained from the butterfly effect. With 15 bonus points in hand, he invests them all in strength, raising it from 1 to 16. Confident in his experience with goblins and orcs, he walks through the door. The players follow him with Kim right behind, wondering if Lee had conquered this place in his past life. Inside, a goblin leaps from the shadows and bites Lee's arm. The armor activates instantly, blocking the attack. Lee crushes the goblin's skull with a single hand and earns another bonus point. The others watch in disbelief as his strength increases rapidly in just a few hours. A female player says it's impossible, and Kim murmurs that the armor must be why Lee was once the strongest player in Korea. When Lee ignores his words, jealousy overwhelms Kim. He grabs a chainsaw and attacks, but the blade can't penetrate the glowing armor. Lee smiles coldly, crushes the chainsaw, and grabs Kim by the neck. As Kim gasps in fear, he reminds him of the battlefield's truth. Greed always ends in destruction. He realizes that those regressors thought they could steal what was once his. Fixing his gaze on the others, he warns them to stay away. Then he twists Kim's neck and drops the body. A heavy silence follows. Lee reminds himself that the old laws of the world no longer matter. The game has begun, and mercy only leads to weakness. He looks at the trembling players and tells them to leave if they value their lives. He then looks at Kim's corpse and understands just how cruel this game truly is. An inventory window floats over the body, offering his items to the others. Lee murmurs about how convenient it is and takes the Goblin Champion's necklace, noting that it now has a new owner. The system grants him bonus points for changing the future. The necklace greatly increases his strength and agility, giving him the same power as leveling up 2 times. It might lose its value later on, but for now, it's useful. When a player mocks his appearance, Lee ignores the comment and takes the broken chainsaw to finish off the remaining goblins. Even if the increase seems small, every bit of power counts. Shortly after, a notification appears, indicating that all the monsters are dead and that the dungeon will collapse in 3 minutes. He remembers that a gate only closes when all the monsters inside have been eliminated. Those who fail to escape will disappear with it, which explains the short escape timer. Next to the gate, he sees the boy who had cried for his father earlier. Lee asks him if he wants to die there. The boy insists on staying with him. Lee orders him to leave, but the boy continues to plead. Frustrated, Lee gives in again and assigns his remaining 9 bonus points to strength, raising it to 25 and 28 with the necklace. The boy then reveals that they went back 10 years into the past. He says that his life won't change even after those 10 years, so he wishes to be a hero at least once. He asks to follow Lee, introducing himself as Kim Min-soo. His words and knowledge of future events catch Lee's attention. Min-soo confesses that he fought against monsters and dragons for 10 years and that he now wishes to serve the hero of Korea. Lee finds it interesting and accepts his loyalty. Upon leaving the gate, Lee asks him if being a companion is his only goal. Min-soo replies that he wants to be second in command, calling Lee number 1. Lee challenges him to prove it by naming 10 players from the future, allies or enemies, warning him that betrayal means death. Min-soo agrees, and they both exchange contact information before parting ways. 3 days later, the world is still adapting to the regression. Many players remain silent, afraid of being called crazy, or hoping to start a new life. But with everyone returning, no one can stand out as the sole protagonist. The media and online platforms are filled with stories about the new world. Lee watches the news from his apartment. The anchor, Jun Minom, reports that the world has turned into a game and introduces Il Guk, director of the Asia-Pacific branch of the World Player Association. Jung asks him about the chaos surrounding the regression. Donuk explains that it benefits humanity, since the strongest players can protect others and restore order faster. Only those who sell knowledge of the future pose a problem. JN then questions if the regression is related to the final dungeon, as the players returned 3 hours after 21 people entered it. Lee listens and remembers that the final dungeon appeared 10 years later. 3 hours after they entered, everyone returned. Jong speculates that it might be the true end of the game. As the broadcast ends, Lee mutters about those disgusting guys and remembers he was once the strongest player. He listens to the news and finally understands why the players at the hardware store called him a hero. A bonus point appears, and he assumes it's for the bubble wrap on his window. In his past life, he never bothered to do things like that. Now even small actions seem to grant him rewards. He earns points for drinking water and for sitting on the couch. His total climbs to 37, and the constant growth improves his mood. Looking at the numbers, ambition begins to stir in him. He wonders how he managed to become the strongest player in Korea without the butterfly effect ability. He learned early on that the weak must yield to the strong, and that belief drove him to pursue power through money and battle. Now, with a real path to absolute strength, he feels that dream rekindling. The news countdown ends, revealing statues of Leun, Park, Musang, and Coulson, the heroes who entered the final dungeon. Seeing his own statue shocks him. It's strange to be revered like this just 3 days after the regression. He recalls being the highest-paid mercenary in his past life, a weapon people bought for war. Back then, fame meant nothing to him, but now it feels different. The reporter explains that all players returned after the dungeon event, suggesting something inside caused the regression. Don Guk adds that the 3 heroes have disappeared, hiding to protect their rare skills and items. Jong asks if that's true, and Don Guk confirms it. He then mentions a new rule. The heroes who entered the final dungeon are now pardoned for any crime. Lee turns off the TV before hearing more. 2 things are clear to him. Many people are hunting him, and he can now legally defend himself. He puts on his jacket and runs out into the streets. He realizes he never went to Wangguaman Square in his past life. Every step proves the future is already changing. He spends his bonus points on agility, raising it to 52. As he runs, he reflects on how others focus on strength or mana. For him, the usual path no longer applies. His bonus points grow faster than anyone else's, making him an exception. He arrives at the crowded square wearing a hoodie and a mask. He mutters that this is insane. If people knew who he was, chaos would erupt. He observes the crowd and senses hidden weapons in their inventories. Everyone wants to look strong. Fame has turned players into idols, but also into prey. He looks at the statues again. People once prayed before them as if they were gods. Now, the area is empty. His eyes stop on his own statue, marked with the title Shadow of Death. Suddenly, a player named Chin Chambai appears and smashes the statue's head with a mace. A system message appears, awarding Lee bonus points for changing the future. Chan lands nearby and hides his weapon, not knowing who is in front of him. Chan destroys the statue and starts to flee. Lee follows him, but with his agility above 50, his movements feel harder to control. After a short chase, he catches up to Chan and grabs him by the neck. Lee rips off his mask, and the fear in Chan's eyes reveals that he recognizes him. Lee demands to know where he was going. Chan tries to reach for his mace, but Lee grabs his hand and takes it from him. The weapon belonged to an orc champion and has a chance to stun, in addition to increasing attack and strength. Lee questions how he obtained such a rare weapon in just 5 days. Convinced he must belong to a guild, he tightens his grip and reminds him of his immunity from crimes. Chan gasps for air and begs to be released. Lee demands his name and his guild's name. Trembling, Chan admits he belongs to the General Guild. Lee orders him to continue. When Lee mentions the Liun project, Chan finally reveals that it's a guild plan to collect all the skills and items he once had. After some hesitation, he admits that the first target is the stealth skill. It is located in the Lycan dungeon, which will open in 3 days. He adds that 100 players will be waiting for him there, confident that Lee will return for it. Lee realizes that those players must be regressors. Later, Lee meets with Minsu and explains what he has discovered. Minsu distrusts Chan and asks for permission to kill him, but Lee refuses. Minsu insists the guild will act sooner than expected, while Chan claims it will be tomorrow. Lee knows one of them is lying. The argument escalates until Lee grabs them both by the neck and demands proof. Minsu shows his phone with an article stating that Lee will appear in the Lycan dungeon on January 7th, which is tomorrow. He explains that the dungeon appeared early in the game, and that the Lycans are much stronger than goblins or orcs. They move in packs, and no one managed to clear that dungeon before. When they escaped, they destroyed cities and killed thousands. Now Lee understands why that dungeon became so infamous. It caused massive destruction, and people feared it more than any other. Minsu reminds him that he was the one who destroyed it in the past. Lee turns to Chan and demands to know who ordered him to destroy the statue. Chan loses control and reaches into his inventory. Lee reacts first and breaks his neck. A message appears, granting him 1 bonus point. Lee realizes that in his past life, he probably forgave Chan. The world is changing faster now because of the regressors. He turns to Minsu and mentions the possibility of killing Lycans, perhaps by using poison. Minsu asks him why he's asking about things he should know. Lee cuts him off and admits that he never returned through time, warning him to keep it a secret. Minsu is stunned and tells him that such knowledge is useless without power. The Lycans are level 5 monsters, and lower-level players cannot enter the dungeon. Lee nods, understanding that he must reach level 5 soon. He is currently at level 2, but he knows that level itself isn't everything. With 80 stat points and 162 bonus points, his total comes to 242. According to his calculations, that's equivalent to the power of a level 80 player. Still, Minsu reminds him that even with that power, he can't face the Lycans yet, and his low level prevents him from entering the dungeon. He asks Minsu to take him to a place where he can level up. Minsu explains that, for now, only goblin and orc dungeons exist, as new gates open slowly, and the Lycans one will appear tomorrow. Most players ignore these weaker dungeons, considering them a waste of time. Lee calls those monsters adorable and uses his bonus points to raise his strength to 187, thereby strengthening his armor skill. They arrive at a goblin and orc dungeon. A goblin throws rocks, but Lee moves quickly and kills 2 with ease. His speed and strength leave no room for resistance. While fighting, he asks Minsu about skill stones. Minsu explains that they are found near the monster's heart, and their color indicates their class. White for common, purple for rare, yellow for unique, and red for legendary. The stealth skill from the Lycan dungeon belongs to the rare class, so its stone glows purple. He asks about the meaning of these classes. Minsu tells him that the boast, rare and lower skills can appear multiple times, but unique and legendary ones exist only once. Skills can also level up, increasing their effect. When Lee asks about special skills, Minsu admits he's never heard of them, and Lee drops the subject. The next day, Lee reaches level 5. He and Minsu are standing in the spot where the Lycan Gate will soon appear. A crowd is already gathering. Lee tells Minsu to watch while he takes care of everything. Just ahead, about 100 players from the General Guild are waiting. Only 5 can enter the dungeon, and Lee must be among them. A man steps forward and announces that it was here, where Lee obtained the stealth skill in the past. He declares that this time, the General Guild will claim it. The crowd cheers, confident in their victory. 5 minutes later, the countdown begins. When it ends, the door opens. Lee lunges forward before anyone can react. The players shout and try to block him, but no one can match his speed. He reaches the gate first and enters, followed by 4 others. The system announces that the dungeon is full. Outside, Minsu watches in astonishment, realizing that Lee has already surpassed what any regressor achieved in just 5 days. As soon as they saw Lee, one of the players shouted to get ready. 3 of them took out goblin chef whips to tie his hands and neck, while the 4th threw a net over him. Their plan was clear. They knew they couldn't defeat him, so they tried to trap him instead. Lee activated his armor skill and easily reversed the situation, tying them up instead. As they struggled under the net, the Lycans entered with ferocious growls. Lee wondered if the rage was part of their nature. The trapped players pleaded for mercy, admitting they were just following orders. But before they could explain further, the Lycans attacked. The players assumed they would all die, but Lee crushed the beasts effortlessly. He remembered that wolves and dogs share the same weak point, the snout. Years ago, a detection dog had bitten him during a mission, and he had subdued it by holding its snout. Remembering this, he grabbed the Lycans by their snouts and crushed them. The monsters fell, unable to move. When the players asked why he didn't kill them, Lee explained that eliminating all the monsters would cause the dungeon to collapse and close the gate. He planned to find the Lycan with the skill stone first, and then leave quietly before anyone outside noticed him. When the Lycans got up again, Lee muttered that it wasn't enough, and completely broke their bones. He then turned to the trapped players and demanded the name of their leader. Trembling, they revealed it was Cholsun. Lee recalled that name engraved next to his own statue, and asked if Cholsun ordered them to go for the stealth skill. They admit it, explaining they were only following orders. But one accuses another of betrayal. Lino grabs the one who screamed and breaks his shoulder, reminding them he's not there to play. He recognizes Coulson, the leader of the General Guild, who once fought by his side in the final dungeon. Although he was never a true comrade, Coulson was still part of his team. Now that same man has turned against him, but Lino feels no betrayal. He knows the world is governed by self-interest. As more Lycans appear, he sees that when some die, new ones appear to keep their numbers constant. This dungeon allows 25 at a time, which he finds beneficial. He removes the net from the tied-up players and mutters that Coulson must understand why his men have to die. Then he throws them towards the pouncing Lycans. The dungeon only allows 5 players at the same time, so when one group dies, others can enter. Soon, new players enter and find the severed heads of their comrades. Rage drives them, but Lino easily defeats and ties them up too. When he demands to know which Lycan carries the skill stone, one reveals it's the one with white eyebrows. Their quick cooperation shows that fear has broken them. Lino searches for and finds the injured Lycan. He disembowels it with his bare hands, scattering blood and flesh everywhere. He thinks that Minsu should handle these kinds of tasks in the future. Inside, he finds the stone, containing the stealth ability. The prisoners whisper that it's the same ability a hero used in the final dungeon and regret losing the chance to get it. Lino considers selling the stone to get rich, but dismisses the thought. Ever since the game began, power has been above all else. He remembers his childhood as an orphan and the wars he survived. True power is now within his grasp, and he will take it to shape a new history. He swallows the stone, but a message indicates the ability is locked until he reaches level 10. Frustration grows, as his current level is 6. Determined, he resolves to get stronger, and uses his 102 bonus points to increase his strength, raising it to 289. Knowing the guild's men are waiting for him outside, he realizes a direct fight would be dangerous. To keep himself safe, he leaves one Lycan alive. Thus, the dungeon remains open. More will keep spawning, allowing him to continue training with his immense strength. Even a level 5 monster poses no challenge. He focuses on controlling his power to avoid killing them too quickly. After constant combat, he reaches level 10. The stealth skill is unlocked and he activates it, causing his hand to turn transparent while his clothes remain visible. The players explain to him that at higher levels, even clothing disappears. He checks his skills and sees progress levels next to each one. When they confirm that total invisibility starts at level 2, he takes off his clothes and activates the skill again, disappearing completely. He realizes that these players came for the same skill he possessed in his past life. If they had succeeded, they would have killed him for it. As he prepares to leave, the lichens surround the tied-up players who are begging for mercy. He orders them to be quiet and walks away without looking back. Outside the gate, the crowd notices that it has opened again, and they whisper, wondering who died and who will be next to enter. At the same time, Lee walks out unseen thanks to his stealth. Observing the restless people, he mutters that the sight is worth it. Then he sees Minsu, taps him on the shoulder and tells him to be quiet, before signaling for a taxi for them to take. Later, while checking the news, he reads the report about his return and the incident at the Lichen dungeon. The headlines call his hunting method shocking and show the bodies of 8 members of the General Guild killed by the lichens. Minsu shows him a live stream where the hosts are discussing Lee's appearance and mention his confident and calm attitude before the final dungeon in his past life, when he raised his middle finger at reporters and became a symbol of defiance. Now they debate whether his fame comes only from that attitude or from something more. The discussion changes tone when Park Hang-sik, chairman of the Player Skills and Technology Association, joins the broadcast. He claims that the moment he appeared in the Lichen dungeon, the game was over. Indeed, his statement causes outrage, and even Lee is surprised. The hosts accuse Hangik of sowing confusion, but he stands firm. He explains that his team studied the lichens' corpses and found that each skull was caved in by a single blow. Given the hardness of lichen bones, such strength could only come from a level 40 player with all their points allocated to strength. When asked if any special equipment could explain it, Hangik denies it, saying that no known item exists that could cause that level of damage. Holding a lichen head, he points to the wound and claims that Lee crushed their skulls with just a flick of his finger. Some hosts laugh, while others demand his resignation. Lee reflects that those who deny Hangik's words are people with power and wealth, guilds, associations, and industries that profit from the game. They fear the truth will destroy morale and reduce profits. Hangik concludes by saying that if the game reaches its final stage again, Lee will surely be among those who finish it. The hosts dismiss his claim, though one jokes, connecting Lee's past gesture to his current power. Lee mutters in disbelief, wondering how that woman became a host. He reflects that his path now is different from his previous life, only his strength remains the same. He realizes that without higher levels, stats alone are useless. He couldn't enter the Lichen dungeon or properly use stealth at first due to level restrictions. To get stronger, he needs more experience. Determined, he starts hunting lichens in another dungeon. What once felt satisfying now feels monotonous. He murmurs that he's tired of them and wants something new. Minsu warns him that it's still the best hunting ground, but Lee asks about the next dungeon. Minsu mentions the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon, though no player can enter yet, as only 5 days have passed. Lee sees an opportunity. If no one can get in, then the blue monkeys will come out on their own. Minsu recalls how dangerous they were in his past life. Lee admits it might be risky, but he remains confident. With bonus points equivalent to what others would earn after more than 100 levels, he believes that in the face of true strength, no monster matters. Those who never awakened as players didn't return. However, they already know that the blue monkeys will soon appear and destroy everything. That's why the streets are empty. 6 days into the game, no one is strong enough to face monsters. Thus, Lee and Minsu walk toward an underground parking garage. The silence feels dense. Minsu admits he's only seen the blue monkeys on the news, but he knows how terrifying they are. They are above level 10, can attack from a distance, and even mimic humans. Suddenly, a car horn sounds in the distance, and Minsu suspects the monsters are toying with him. He notices they've already escaped the gate, opens his status window, and moves all his 251 bonus points to agility, raising it to 578. In a flash, he disappears toward the monsters. Minsu watches in disbelief, knowing that even a single hit from a blue monkey could kill him. Lee cuts through the monsters with ease. Their attempt to retreat fails, as the rules prevent them from re-entering the dungeon. He sees the fear in their eyes, the same fear humans show when death is near. Minsu finds it strange that creatures that once brought terror to humanity are now fleeing in fear. Smiling, Lee gives chase, knowing that constantly leveling up is the only way to stay in the game. Without it, he'll lose access to dungeons and abilities. When he checks again, he has reached level 17 with 202 bonus points. Minsu is stunned that he gained so much in just 6 days, but Lee feels exhaustion starting to set in. His low stamina can no longer balance his speed and strength. He allocates all the points to stamina, raising it to 213, and resumes the battle. The blue monkeys throw debris at him, but nothing stops him. When the last one falls, Minsu watches in awe, realizing that if people saw this, they would lose their minds. Then he remembers the security cameras recording everything, standing right by the gate. Minsu suggests destroying it. He explains that if it remains open, more monsters will keep appearing, turning it into a farming ground that prevents stronger creatures from spawning. Lee agrees that the blue monkeys are already too weak to give him any real growth. He only came because a higher-level dungeon doesn't exist yet. Minsu adds that clearing dungeons unlocks stronger ones, and that humanity never allows weak gates to remain open. Lee asks if that means defeating more dungeons will only make life harder for everyone else. Minsu nods, pointing out that he just cleared a level 14 gate in only 6 days, something that took nearly a month in their past lives. When Lee asks how he knows, Minsu shows him an app where players post dungeon records and strategies. The first clear time becomes official, and top players gain national recognition. Hearing this, Lee decides to post his record under the name Fless, a word that means fearless. Minsu agrees and uploads it. Soon, the forums erupt with excitement and panic over the arrival of level 15 dungeons. Meanwhile, inside a nearby shelter, a little girl asks her mother when they can go home. The woman replies that there are 29 days left. Then, a man shouts that the dungeon has been cleared. People call him a liar, until screens light up with footage of Lee killing the blue monkeys. Cheers of joy fill the place as they realize it's true. On the player site, everyone notices the new name, Fless. No one knows who he is, but it doesn't matter. To those watching, a new hero has appeared. Lee and Minsu walk down the road discussing the events of their past lives. Minsu recalls that the level 15 dungeon was cleared 41 days after the game started, but it happened in Japan, where the crimson-eyed horse appeared. Korea also had a level 15 gate, but no one was strong enough to clear it. When Lee asks about the next monster, Minsu explains that it's a level 15 giant bear. He adds that monsters below level 20 aren't that dangerous, as they lack skills, although higher-level ones take longer to defeat. He recalls that once, 71 days passed between clearing the level 19 and level 20 dungeons. As they continue walking, his friend wonders if 300 kilometers is too far. Lee replies that every step gives him bonus points, so walking is worth it. This makes his friend reflect on how even small actions can change the future. Dropping a pen or avoiding an insect could alter what would have happened. So, Lee walks carefully, aware that every decision shapes his path. Suddenly, a truck honks behind them. The driver shouts and curses, ordering them to move. Lee responds calmly, but the man keeps yelling and accelerates. Anger shows on Lee's face, and before his friend can stop him, Lee disappears, catches up to the truck, confronts the driver, and warns him to control his temper if he wants to stay alive. The driver quickly apologizes, and Lee lets him go, choosing peace over anger. As they resume their journey, Lee realizes the dungeons are opening faster than before. This gives him a chance to widen the gap between himself and the others. Those with memories of the past are losing their advantage, while he continues to grow stronger on his own. The scene shifts to the battle inside the level 15 dungeon. A gigantic bear towers over Lee. He knows that once level 20 monsters appear, they will start using skills, so he must get stronger quickly. The bear strikes hard, knocking him back, but he dodges and climbs up its arm. With a burst of strength, he breaks its neck and watches it fall. More beasts charge, but he defeats them all. Meanwhile, online debates spread about who cleared the level 14 dungeon. Some argue it was Lee, others say it was Park Musang. His friend mentions that a level 16 dungeon has already been cleared by Choi, whose real name is Choi Chul. He was one of the men who entered the final dungeon alongside Lee. Lee reflects that Choi must have obtained a rare skill from his past life. His friend remembers that Choi was the Poison King and leader of Korea's strongest guild, the General Guild. Lee remembers how Choi tried to steal his stealth skill and decides he needs to move faster. When Lee asks about Choi's weapon, his friend recalls a black dagger that once belonged to the Golden Leopard, a level 20 monster from Korea. Lee dismisses the memory, focused only on his own progress. His friend informs him that the level 17 and 18 dungeons were cleared on January 9th and 10th. Leaving another dungeon, Lee asks about the next ones. The level 19 dungeon is near the Gangnam Station and the level 21 will open in Yuldan Park in Bundong. Lee notes it would take about 30 minutes to get there without traffic. His friend is relieved that there are fewer people in the area, but Lee remembers that even if crowds show up, no one can enter. Only he can claim the weapon again. Now at level 21, Lee possesses 744 bonus points. He channels them all into strength, raising it to 1033. A system notification appears, announcing he has surpassed 1000 strength points for the first time. He obtains a new title, King of Strength, and gains the Petrify skill, which freezes an opponent for 3 seconds. By testing the skill on his friend, he confirms its power. His friend compares Li's strength to that of Zhongsang, the Emperor of China, who once led all the players from his country and cleared countless dungeons. Li wonders if his new skill is the same as the Emperor's, and his friend confirms it. And so, Li orders his friend to go to Yulden Park and observe who gathers there. Meanwhile, he will clear the level 19 dungeon at Gangnam Station. Minsu agrees and promises to contact him if anything unusual happens. With that, they part ways, each heading to their next task. Li finds himself in front of the level 19 gate, knowing he must clear it to unlock the level 20 Golden Leopard dungeon. The place is filled with crimson moles. He remembers that the level 20 gate will open once any level 19 dungeon is cleared, but since no one else seems capable, he decides to take care of it himself. Soldiers surround the area, managing the evacuation. One of them stops Li and asks for identification. Li admits he doesn't have any. A mole suddenly emerges from the ground and the soldiers open fire, but their bullets do nothing to it. A soldier asks Li for an explanation, and he calmly explains that weapons can't harm those monsters. When asked if he's a player, he nods. Another mole appears behind them. Li activates his Petrify skill, freezing it in midair and then crushing its neck. Seeing this, the soldier steps aside and lets him pass. Inside, Li studies the dungeon. The moles are not only strong but also cunning, hiding deep underground. Knowing he can't dig them out, he takes the blue monkey's skin from his inventory. Burning it releases a toxic smoke that attracts the monsters. The fumes spread through the burrows, forcing the moles to surface. Li catches each one and kills them effortlessly. Soon, all 15 lie dead. A system message appears, announcing that the dungeon has been cleared and that the gates will collapse in 3 minutes. His phone rings. Minsu warns him that reporters have surrounded the Golden Leopard dungeon. Li tells him to get rid of them and that he'll be there soon. Li finds it strange that the General Guild hasn't shown up, despite knowing about Li's stealth ability. He concludes that they are avoiding him because they know that crossing him means death. Li leaves the soldiers behind and drives to Yulton Park. When he arrives, the place is crowded. Annoyed, he calls Minsu, reminding him that he was supposed to clear the area. Minsu explains that he tried, but no one listened to him. Li gets out of the car, determined to handle it himself. As soon as the reporters see him, they rush toward him, shouting his name. Questions fly from all directions. Some accuse him of demoralizing the players. Others blame him for causing chaos by clearing dungeons too quickly. There are even those who beg for autographs and photos. He finds the noise unbearable. After years of war, he has learned to value silence. He looks at the crowd and declares that weakness is not a sin, but blaming others for it is. Those who do should rot in hell. His sharp words silence the crowd for a moment. Then, a reporter mentions Bogard, a Canadian player who once entered the final dungeon. Bogard has claimed that Li is strong now, but that he will be the weakest among the high-level players later on. He asks which network has the highest ratings. When they point to a reporter, he turns to the camera, raises his middle finger, and gives Bogard his answer. He enters the Golden Leopard dungeon, where 7 golden leopards roam. The dungeon only allows 2 players and has a B-rank difficulty known for granting rare items. He remembers that hunting these beasts normally requires 2 skilled players and that B-rank dungeons are never easy. One of the leopards roars and stuns him. He expected it, knowing the roar prevents him from using skills for a while. Without his abilities, he must fight differently. When the leopard lunges, he dodges its claws, aware that even one scratch could be lethal. He activates his stealth skill and moves unseen across the battlefield. From the shadows, he strikes quickly, relying on speed and precision rather than defense. Realizing his only option is close-quarters combat, he grabs a leopard and slams it to the ground. The fight drags on, but he endures. Finally, all 7 beasts fall. A system message declares the dungeon cleared, and he checks his inventory. Inside, he finds a weapon called the Dagger of Destruction. Its description says it channels the energy of the wielder's skills. He equips it, noticing it has no fixed stats, but radiates immense power. Upon activating his armor, the dagger gains the same ability. When he turns invisible, the blade also vanishes with him. Its strength grows alongside his, just like in his past life. Satisfied, he prepares to leave as the gate begins to collapse. Outside, A crowd of reporters surrounds him again. They shout his name and bombard him with questions about Flez, the dungeon, and his weapon. The noise irritates him. He sees Minsu nearby, apologizing for not clearing the area. He understands. His friend doesn't have enough influence to stop them. Then he notices something strange. Not a single player has appeared. Normally, many would come running to try and steal his loot and skills. But there's no one. That thought unsettles him. Then, a reporter shouts, asking when he will get the unique skill. Eye of God. Lee freezes in confusion, as he's never heard of it. His friend signals him after hearing the name, reminding him it was once his ability. Reporters close in, demanding to know his stats and level. Lee calmly replies that he's level 24 and has 1033 strength. Silence falls. He declares he's beyond the law and warns that, if anyone bothers him again, he will kill them. The next day, chaos spreads across the globe. Newspapers run headlines calling him the birth of a god and mock Bogua's previous provocations. Others report that the Golden Leopard dungeon was cleared in under 40 minutes. Governments express their concern, and North Korea labels him a global threat. Every media outlet writes about his refusal to give interviews and his threat to the press. Later, Lee and Minsu are sitting in the living room. Lee asks him about the Eye of God. Minsu confirms its existence, saying that Lila possessed it in her past life. It allowed her to see her opponent's stats and inventory, making it a unique and unparalleled skill. As she leveled up, it would evolve through a process called a second awakening, changing not only in power but also in form. Minsu speculates that, at higher levels, the ability could detect even the slightest movement in an enemy's pupils or their heartbeat, giving Lee perfect accuracy in combat. Lee asks where he might find it, and Minsu suggests checking the player website that tracks dungeon records. Though it's not foolproof, it could narrow down the search. Lee knows time is short. Many players have returned from the future and will rush to claim that ability. Large guilds and low-level players alike will be searching for it. Minsu reminds him that he was one of the strongest players in his past life and that people talk about him constantly. Rumors about Project Lion are spreading quickly, and major guilds have started studying the records of those who entered the final dungeon. Lee wonders if those records were created because they anticipated the regression, but Minsu clarifies they were made for assassination purposes. The guilds documented every powerful player, noting where they obtained their items and skills. That knowledge allowed them to plan robberies and assassinations. The General Guild once tried to steal Lei's stealth ability, using whips and nets after learning he had armor. Even after failing, they followed him closely, waiting for another chance. Le realizes that those records are like treasure maps leading directly to his former power. Minsu admits that his own guild also collected that data. Skills and items were everything in that world, and killing became a natural part of survival. By tracking dungeon gates, the guilds could guess exactly when someone obtained a new skill. Lei reflects that the General Guild, led by the Poison King, Choi Kolsun, is the most powerful in Korea and one of his old rivals. They already know his past abilities and might now be pursuing something even greater, the Eye of God. Minsu suggests they might be using their memories of the past to forge powerful weapons early on. Lei agrees, but adds that they probably avoided the Golden Leopard's dungeon for two reasons. First, they plan to let him collect his old skills and items, then kill him and take it all at once. Second, out of fear, his strength has already terrified them so much that none dare to face him again. Le checks the game's website and sees that the level 21 Black Orc dungeon has been cleared by the player, Poison, Choi. He observes that Choi is working hard. Before, players from the United States and China appeared on the leaderboard, but from level 20 onwards, only his name and Choi Coulson's remain. He is now at level 25, with 732 bonus points, which he assigns to concentration, raising it to 733. He reflects that no one can become an emperor yet, as that title requires a stat higher than 1000. When his strength surpassed that mark, he obtained the title King of Strength and unlocked the Petrify skill, which belonged to Emperor Yong in his past life. Since only one level 21 dungeon has been cleared so far, no one else could have reached such power yet. His friend agrees with his decision, noting that concentration is vital. He explains that it improves combat awareness, evasion, and accuracy, allowing him to use his full strength to the max. It also helps when skills can't be used. When asked if he needs more mana, he replies that he never runs out, as he controls it efficiently. Lee decides to improve his stealth skill next. His friend suggests that using brute force might be faster, but Lee explains that stealth provides information through espionage and infiltration, making it more useful. He plans to get it to level 2 before visiting the General Guild headquarters. As they leave, His friend comments on his simple clothes and insists he should dress according to his growing power. Although reluctant, Lee agrees and accompanies him to a shop known for selling clothes for dungeon players. The owner, recognizing Lee, offers him the clothes as a gift in his honor. Amused by the gesture, Lee accepts and leaves after changing into his new outfit. He then asks how to level up stealth. His friend explains that proficiency is gained by understanding and using the skill repeatedly. Certain actions increase proficiency points, which triggers system notifications. Lee deduces that other regressor players already know these methods and decides to start testing them. They enter a goblin and orc dungeon. The goblins pose no threat, so Lee focuses on the orcs. He activates stealth as one roars nearby, testing different approaches. When he tries to combine armor with stealth, he fails, so he changes back and attacks the orc's neck, gaining proficiency. Seeing the process works, he continues hunting until stealth reaches level 2. Now, anything touching his skin can turn invisible, depending on his mana. Satisfied, Lee asks about the General Guild headquarters. His friend tells him it's in Cheongdam, in the Gangnam district. Lee smiles and comments that it must be a place for rich people. Lee stands in front of the General Guild headquarters with his stealth skill active. 2 guild players walk past him, complaining about the problems caused by Lee Yoon. One murmurs that they're just pretending to help while collecting money, and the other warns him to keep quiet. As they swipe their cards, the guard greets them, and Lee Yoon slips in behind. One of the players stops, sensing something strange, but dismisses it. Lee Yoon considers it a narrow escape and hears an announcement calling all executives to a meeting at 9:30. He decides to follow them. Inside the conference room, he keeps his stealth active. A man opens the meeting, stating that the date is January 14th. A ranker mentions that the guildmaster is absent, clearing a level 23 dungeon. Another worries about his status. A B-rank player declares that their master will soon claim the Eye of God, and Lee Yoon carefully notes the phrase. They discuss monitoring Lee Yoon, complaining that his name dominates every meeting and that they can't find him. Vice Master Chuan comments that if they can't locate him, capturing him is a lost cause. Lee Yoon smirks to himself, knowing he's right there. Anung adds that losing the stealth skill, the dagger, and now the Eye of God would destroy them. The man leading the meeting states that Lee Yoon will show up for the Eye of God. An executive objects, saying Lee Yoon's power has grown beyond belief. He shows a newspaper reporting a strength of 103 for Lee Yoon, calling it impossible. Anung dismisses it as a bluff to instill fear and asks, "What's the plan?" The man presents documents detailing Lee Yoon's past actions, revealing that he claimed the Eye of God in the presented, level 34 Black Ogre dungeon, killing 4 guild members. He asks those who died to raise their hands. Yong, Lee, Yuhin, Park Wongo, and Gosan Yoon respond. Lee Yoon watches them silently, remembering their fates. Ajun recounts that the dungeon always contains a rare skill, and that their master sent them there years ago. They had underestimated Lee Yoon for being a weak player, and that mistake led to their deaths. Fear is noticeable in their voices as they recall. Park admits he still trembles, remembering it. Ajun explains that the unique skill, Eye of God, always appears in that dungeon, and that they now have information obtained after a regression. Lee Yoon glances at the documents, noting the dungeon's location and the monster's weaknesses. Ansun asks, "What's the plan?" Yukun explains that this time their master will go personally, and since only they know the dungeon well, they will take the opportunity to kill him and retrieve the Eye of God. He proposes using that SA2 on the Black Ogres. Another player protests, reminding him that the substance is forbidden. Yukun insists there is no other way to stop Lee. He adds that they will support their master and return with the eye. Listening from the shadows, he silently wonders if they're ready to die the same way again. Human imagination knows no bounds. Even as monsters threaten the world, humans study their remains to craft tools for survival. Monster materials are unlike anything on Earth. Some are harder than iron yet light, some burn better than coal, and others can be molded into complex designs. These discoveries advance human technology, though not always for the better. One such creation is the substance SA2. Lee messages his friend to ask about the substance. His friend is alarmed and warns him that it's banned by the World Players Association. When Lee asks what it's for, his friend explains that it amplifies a monster's power. A test once turned a goblin into one strong enough to defeat a level 20 golden leopard. The substance was originally created as a weapon to unleash monsters in enemy lands, but it caused chaos, leading to the deaths of soldiers and players at the hands of weaker beasts. At the guild meeting, Leon explains that the SA2 lasts for 24 hours. When Lee appears at the Black Ogre's gate, they plan to inject the substance into the monsters, raising their strength to level 100. After killing him, they will seize his skills, items, and the Eye of God. Ansun approves but warns everyone to keep quiet, or the guild will collapse if the truth gets out. He emphasizes that the Eye of God is too valuable, and urges everyone to get stronger before facing the level 33 Black Ogres. Yukun agrees and thanks them for their support. Suddenly, Lee receives a warning from the system. His stealth ability will soon deactivate due to lack of mana, and he regrets not investing more points earlier, and quickly applies the 243 bonus points to his mana, raising it to 341. Yukun senses the sudden change and asks who just used a skill. Wango dismisses it, but Yujin insists he felt a strong flow of mana. Before suspicions can spread, someone enters to announce the guildmaster's arrival. Cholsun enters, and the room fills with tension. Lee feels the power emanating from him. Cholsun assures everyone there's no need to be alarmed. Anung mentions trial too, insisting it's their only chance to defeat Ayun, whose strength seems impossible. Cholsun replies that Ayun isn't lying, though his power is certainly incredible. He then orders everyone to move out. As Cholsun passes by him, Lee considers confronting him but decides to focus on the files. He follows a man carrying documents, slipping through the door as the man scans his eye to enter. His high concentration keeps his movements silent. Once inside, he reveals himself and ties up the man with blue monkey hide and seizes the records of his past life. He studies the papers under the light of his lighter. The records are detailed, describing every battle and every player he ever killed. Reading them brings him a slight sadness. Then, he reviews the list of items and skills, each linked to the monsters they came from, and finds the precision almost admirable. Ayun's records reveal that after completing the level 245 dungeon, his body completely changed. His darkened form became unstable and destroyed everything in its path. The scene was indescribable, and it became a legendary grade skill that players later called the Shadow of Ayun, earning him the title of the Shadow of Death. After the world's reset, this same power now belongs to Cholsun, the General Guildmaster. Reading the records, Lee realizes this is the last entry about his past and his future. He suspects it is only a copy and demands the original before destroying the archive, shattering the supercomputer, which contained all the guild's data. He gains a large number of bonus points, showing just how much the world's balance has changed with the guild's fall. The archive's destruction itself alters the course of the future. Knowing that strength must come first, Lee invests all the bonus points into his strength stat, raising it to 254. Lee sends a message to his friend, explaining they can't predict how much the SA2 substance will enhance the monsters. His friend replies that a strength of 2,000 by itself is already extraordinary. When Lee asks what else he's learned, his friend explains that the substance was originally created to increase dungeon rewards. Humans believed that stronger monsters would make for tougher dungeons and better rewards, so they experimented by injecting the substance into monsters. However, the system never recognized the change, making the substance unpredictable and dangerous. Lee finds the substance troublesome and worries about the General Guild's plan to use it on the Black Ogres. His friend suggests testing it. First, they inject a goblin with the substance, and it roars with sudden power before lunging to attack. Lee reacts quickly, grabbing its skull and crushing it, noting its speed but realizing its strength is still far below his own. Later, Lee enters a level 27 dungeon filled with jagged-toothed zombies. Their putrid stench makes it hard to concentrate. They move as fast as blue monkeys, and their iron jaws can crush anything, as even shattering their skulls or organs doesn't stop them. So he decides decapitation is the only option. Using stealth, he cuts them down one by one. The combat grants him no experience, but he gains 456 bonus points. Though useful, he still finds it insufficient. When the last zombie falls, the system announces that all monsters have been defeated and that the gate will collapse in 3 minutes. Another message appears, stating that his butterfly skill proficiency has increased and that his actions are greatly altering the future. Lee pauses, wondering what the system truly means by those words. Lee steps out the door and calls his friend. He asks if he has any questions left, explaining he doesn't need them due to the regression. Each player received 3 questions from the system at the start, and his friend reveals he already used one to ask why the regression happened, leaving him with 2. Lee suggests asking about skill competition, but his friend hesitates, worried it might be a waste, though he finally agrees. When he asks about butterfly effect skill points, the system replies that no such skill exists. Surprised, he tells Lee he was able to find it. He wonders if Lee has a skill beyond the game itself, something like a bug or illegal program. Before they can discuss further, a new dungeon door appears. A message indicates that a Special Level 1 dungeon with S-rank difficulty has been unlocked, and that only one player can enter. Lee receives a notification that he earned more than 4,000 points through the butterfly effect, which triggered the dungeon's appearance. He advises his friend to ask the system about it, but his friend refuses, frustrated at wasting his last question. He complains about the game creator, saying the system denies what clearly exists. Lee points at the door, reminding him that the system's denial means little when the proof is right before them. A warning appears, stating the door will close in 30 seconds. Both wonder if it can close on its own. Lee steps forward, telling his friend to ask the system about the door while he enters. The system replies that special dungeons appear when a player or small group becomes too powerful compared to others. These dungeons are designed by the game god to restore balance. Overcoming one grants a special skill created to counter an unstoppable player. His friend realizes the door appeared because of Lee, and that any player who clears it could gain a skill powerful enough to challenge him. The system explains it couldn't answer before because the information about special dungeons was added only moments ago. Annoyed, his friend mutters that Lee is about to get even stronger. Inside the dungeon, Lee walks down a dim corridor, noting that an S-rank dungeon should at least grant a unique skill. Suddenly, a goblin appears ahead, smiling unsettlingly. To Lee's surprise, the creature speaks, calling itself the guardian of the special dungeon and revealing its level 200. It mocks his surprise, promising him a quick and painless death. Then, it launches a fiery sphere of fire at him. Lee activates his armor as he takes the hit. The system notifies him that his armor's proficiency has increased. He realizes that he grows stronger by withstanding attacks that surpass his defense. The skill advances to level 2, gaining the ability to release a shockwave. The goblin is shocked by Lee's strength and launches another wave of fire. Lee uses his petrify skill, freezing the creature in midair before smashing it into the ground. The goblin snarls in disbelief, but as Lee grabs its head to crush it, the goblin blocks the attack. Lee is surprised that its skull remains intact. The goblin, smirking, summons 3 clones. One praises Lee's power, wondering how he has survived this long. They launch energy blasts, but Lee deftly dodges them. When a clone attacks from behind, Lee blocks and counterattacks. His armor releases a shockwave that sends the goblin flying. The force astonishes it. The goblin looks at the fallen clone in disbelief, muttering that no human should be this strong. Lee charges again and destroys another clone. The remaining 2 retreat, but he doesn't stop. He notes that they understand human language as he pursues them. Putting all his extra points into strength, he boosts it to 3,486. Lee lunges forward with overwhelming power. One of the clones screams that their deaths can't be part of the god's plan. Lee throws a punch, instantly destroying it. Fear fills the last goblin's eyes, before Lee vanishes using stealth and pierces its neck with his dagger. The creature falls. Lee levels up, realizing it's the result of eliminating such a powerful monster. A notification announces that all monsters have been defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. The level 200 guardian has fallen, and he has been granted a special ability. Excitement builds inside him as he awaits the reward. He receives the special ability, Eye of Reversion, which allows him to read another player's memories. However, he can't read the memories of players stronger than him, and it can only be used once every 24 hours. The ability has the power to close the knowledge gap between players from the past and the present, who previously relied on experience and memory to stay ahead. As he exits the gate, Lee meets his friend, who immediately asks if he got another special ability. Instead of explaining, Lee decides to demonstrate and uses the skill on him. A system message appears, asking which memory he wants to see. Lee selects the moment they were at the supermarket. The memory unfolds before him like a scene with options to pause and rewind. He fast-forwards to see Minsu's father die, and the guilt that haunts his friend. He then sees Minsu looking at him with admiration, believing Lee could change the world and defeat all the monsters. Lee smiles at what he sees and repeats his friend's thoughts aloud, causing Minsu to blush, as he declares they will kill all the monsters and rule the world. Lee looks inside his friend's mind again and hears him refer to him as "my lord." He teases Minsu, who gets flustered and begs him to stop. Lee laughs and decides to wait for the level 29 dungeon. Later, Lee is in his apartment and uploads an update to the game's site, announcing that he has completed the level 28 golden-toothed zombie dungeon. The reactions pour in. Some accuse him of unfairness, others praise him, and many worry about the destruction caused by stronger monsters. Some doubt the final dungeon can ever be cleared, while others call him a god. Lee ignores the debate and focuses on posting his completion times, as the official rankings from the government and the World Player Association depend on them. Reaching the top 10 would grant him freedom from laws and taxes, but his true goal remains the final dungeon that promises power and fame, beyond all measure. Minsu returns with news that Cholsun has cleared the venomous spider dungeon, a feat that seems impossible without a new skill. Lee suspects that Choi is after the Eye of God, and expects to face him in the Black Ogre dungeon. The scene shifts to a level 30 dungeon in South Korea, known as the Dark Horn Pigs. Lee confronts a huge pig whose horns expand with every roar. A single hit could kill him, but he also knows the immense value of those horns. His mana is low, as the Eye of Reversion consumes a lot of energy. With 112 points remaining, he allocates them all to mana. Feeling refreshed, he lunges toward the beasts. The pigs rush toward Lee, and he activates his armor, grabbing their horns. He slams them into the ground. The horns refuse to break, which explains their high value. He steps on the beasts and stabs his dagger into the ground. The armored blade releases a shockwave, surprising him with its power. Understanding the effect, he cuts the horns with ease but feels disappointed by how little they challenged him. Holding the Dark Horn Pig's horns, he notes their value as materials for legendary items. Since he already owns a powerful dagger, he plans to sell them for a profit. The system then announces that all monsters have been defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. Back in his apartment, Lee looks at his phone after posting an update about clearing the level 30 dungeon. The growing attention irritates him, and he wonders how many level 32 gates are open nearby. Minsu replies that there are 2 in South Korea. Lee suspects Cholsun might wait for the level 33 gate, and he plans to do the same. Minsu suggests it could turn into a strategic game. If both men wait, the first one to clear the level 32 gate will force the other to act quickly. Meanwhile, Cholsun stands before a gate, alongside 4 players Lee had killed in his past life. Wango doubts the substance's effectiveness against someone as powerful as Lee. Yukun says Lee's strength is exaggerated, but Wango warns that his power might be real. Cholsun declares he has no intention of facing Lee directly. Even if his strength exceeds 1,000, he believes the enhanced ogres will overpower him. He explains that the SA2 substance multiplies a monster's stats by 20 for 24 hours. Confident in his plan, he decides to let the ogres kill Lee and then claim his items. Upon entering the gate, a group of black ogres appears. Cholsun pulls the pin on an SA2 smoke bomb and throws it forward. The ogres inhale it and fall under its effect. Watching them transform, Cholsun smirks, planning to wait for the substance's effect to wear off before collecting Lee's remains. Then, he and his team leave the dungeon. Lee arrives at the gate with Minsu and notices the eerie silence. He concludes that the enemies already used the substance on the black ogres. Seeing the footprints, he wonders how the supposedly best guild could be so careless. Minsu confirms that the ogres are under the substance's effect and suggests waiting for it to dissipate, but Lee refuses. Since they already know the monster's position, changing plans could alert the enemy. He invests all his bonus points into stamina and tells Minsu to hide, since the general guild has seen his face. Minsu agrees, and waits for Lee's signal. Unbeknownst to them, a guild surveillance bug is recording them. In the control room, the guild's operators track Lee's movements and focus the camera on the gate. They predict he won't last more than 3 hours. Their leader orders them to inform Cholsun immediately. Inside the dungeon, the stench forces Lee to cover his nose. He moves forward, silently, with his dagger ready. He feels the ground tremble as the black ogres approach, each wielding enormous axes. There are more monsters than before, and despite his stealth, they detect him. Realizing their senses have been sharpened by the substance, he prepares for battle. One ogre throws its axe, but Lee activates his armor and dodges it. He casts Petrify, cuts the monster's leg, and stabs his dagger into its back until it falls lifeless. Another ogre attacks with great force, and, although Lee blocks it with his armor, the impact throws him backward. He acknowledges their power as more ogres charge at him. They throw their axes, but Lee dodges them with ease. Seeing their scattered weapons, he notes they are no longer of any use to them. He grabs one of the axes and hurls it at the ogre chief, taking him out. As the body falls, the pack roars in a rage, and Lee readies another axe to face them one by one. With his immense strength, Lee shatters an ogre's arm, leaving it to hang uselessly. The creature roars in pain and swings its other arm, but Lee dodges and shatters its leg. The beast falls and Lee stands over it, deciding not to kill it yet to keep the gate open. Around him lie 9 lifeless ogres. However, the Eye of God remains hidden. He thinks about Cholsun and the General Guild and decides to lure them inside the dungeon. He throws the ogres' heads out of the gate and steps out, provoking the hidden observers. His plan, he says, was neither smart nor effective, and he urges them to come quickly. He then returns inside, ready for their arrival. In the control room, the surveillance team watches in a panic. The administrator contacts Cholsun, explaining that Lee threw out the ogre's heads. Cholsun understands the situation and demands a poison strong enough to kill Lee. Upon being told it is still in production, he orders the administrator's execution, declaring that from now on, all who are useless will die. He then orders the team to create a booster capable of piercing Lee's armor. In his office, Cholsun crushes a poison booster in a rage. That booster once fueled his rise in the previous timeline, when his poison ability earned him the title of Poison King. By using future technology, he could produce toxins that pierced through monsters' defenses. But even now, he doesn't have a poison strong enough to break through Lee's armor. He orders his 4 players to kill Lee in less than 2 hours. If captured, they must take their own lives to protect the plan. Wango hesitates, but Cholsun warns that failure will not be forgiven, and promises they will be remembered as heroes if they succeed. Inside the dungeon, an ogre throws its axe, but Lee easily dodges it. Killing them only makes more appear, and he begins to find the fight tedious. He punches one, killing it instantly, and decides to ignore the rest. Then, a message appears before him, announcing that the dungeon has reached its maximum number of players. Lee smiles, knowing the General Guild has finally entered. Lee faces the players from the General Guild, and a chill runs down their spines. Yukun mutters in disbelief, while Hwango reminds the group that only 2 hours remain before Master Cholsun arrives with the new poison to kill Lee. Lee calmly observes how unprepared they look. Hwango notices something unsettling. Lee doesn't have a single wound. He urges everyone to prepare for battle, declaring they only need to hold out for 2 hours. Yukun tries to flee in a panic, but Lee moves faster, closing the distance and breaking his neck. The others stand paralyzed as Lee comments that finishing him quickly was an act of mercy. Hwango orders his team to remain calm, believing they can stall Lee long enough to be remembered as heroes in the guild's history. Lee moves forward, grabs Hwango by the neck, and activates the Eye of Reversal. Looking into his memories, Lee sees Cholsun drinking a poison enhancer that strengthens his toxins. Going further back in the memory, he watches Cholsun's men discuss using enhancers derived from venomous spiders, capable of killing instantly. Lee demands details from Hwango, who resists until Lee tightens his grip. Gasping for air, Hwango confesses that the liquid adapts Cholsun's poison to match the monster type. Lee finds the enhancer impressive. Exploring the memories further, he sees Cholsun ordering his lab to create a poison strong enough to penetrate his armor. Hearing Cholsun's frustration at the slow progress, Lee laughs upon realizing that his armor still can't be destroyed. Searching further, he finds a memory of his past self, being forced to abandon a gate claimed by the General Guild. When he refused, he slaughtered them all. Back then, there was no sign of the Eye of God, but now he decides to try the same method. He demands to know why Cholsun hasn't appeared, but Hwango pleads for his life. As a black ogre drags Yukun's body away, Lee mutters that at least there will be no more interruptions. Examining the ogre's corpses, Lee discovers something solid in the stomach of one of them. The Eye of God skill stone. This skill allows him to see the status and inventory of any player or monster below his level. Holding the stone, Lee smiles, ready to delve even deeper into the darkness of the void. In the General Guild conference room, a video of Lee plays on the screen. One player comments that there's nothing left to analyze, since Lee's strength is already beyond their reach. Another expresses disbelief, that he could defeat monsters enhanced by the substance. The first replies it was expected, since even with the substance, monsters are still just monsters. A player mentions the battle isn't over because the Black Ogre's door remains open. When asked why, another explains that Lee is waiting for his prey, not satisfied with just the Eye of God. The room falls silent as they realize he's waiting for Cholsun himself. Cholsun enters and everyone greets him as master. Grabbing his head in anger, he demands to know where the enhancer is. A player kneels and advises him to retreat, explaining that, although development is complete, the final product will take 3 days. Cholsun warns that if Lee obtains the unique class skill from the level 51 Golem Gate, they will never be able to defeat him. The player assures him they will stop Lee, even at the cost of their lives. Cholsun asks if they are sure Lee will die in 3 days. When the player confidently responds, Cholsun grabs his head and kills him with poison, declaring incompetence unacceptable. He orders full security around the laboratory and demands all guild players protect him. His goal is to kill Lee in the level 51 Golem dungeon and take everything he owns. Meanwhile, inside the gate, Lee realizes Cholsun might not come, meaning the booster is not ready yet. He considers razing the guild headquarters, but decides killing only Cholsun would be more beneficial. Using the guild's influence would better serve his plans thanks to memories from his past life. He recalls his next target is the level 51 Silver Armor dungeon, which contains a unique skill. He understands Cholsun's plan is to secure both that skill and a stronger booster. Determined to stop him, he activates stealth and leaves through the door, knowing the guild's eyes are still on him. Outside, he meets Minsu, who reveals that the enhancer factory is in Paju, using the Eye of God. Lee checks Minsu's stats and warns him to be careful, saying that even being too close could be dangerous. Minsu admits he expected him to get the Eye of God, but witnessing it in person is unsettling. He points out the factory's exact location and shows him the car he bought with the money from selling the ogre horn. As they head to Paju, Lee allocates his over 2,000 bonus points to focus, raising it to 2,786. Reasoning that focus strengthens the Eye of God, helping him more accurately read his opponent's stats and weaknesses, he decides that improving focus is essential, as his immense strength is still hard to control. The system recognizes his progress and grants him the title King of Focus. At the Poison Enhancer factory in Paju, Lee and Minsu get out of the vehicle. Lee immediately casts Paralyze on his friend, an unlocked ability. After reaching 1,000 focus points, it disables one of a lower-level opponent's senses for 5 seconds. The system asks which sense to block, and Lee chooses sight. While Minsu is temporarily blinded, Lee punches the factory wall with immense force, making the entire building shake. Inside, the technicians panic, thinking it's an earthquake. When one of them spots Lee and alerts the others, chaos spreads. Enraged that Cholsun isn't there, Lee punches the wall again, causing more destruction. Outside, Minsu watches the building tremble, barely believing his eyes. Spotting a surveillance camera, Lee speaks directly to it, warning that their enhancers will soon be destroyed. He points to a pillar and declares that once it falls, it will all be over. He proposes an exchange, saying there are things he wants from Cholsun, and then crushes the camera. The next morning, Lee is sitting on the rubble when Cholsun arrives. Using the Eye of God, Lee scans his stats. Realizing this, Cholsun casts a curse on him. Lee notices his poison ability, capable of causing death with an 80% probability. Cholsun calls him a coward, but Lee recalls that without his help, he would have died in the Black Ogre's dungeon. According to Lee, victory decides who the real coward is. Cholsun attacks with poison, but Lee dodges it and closes the distance. His speed surprises Cholsun. Grabbing him by the neck, he resists the poison thanks to his armor. He remarks that only a stronger enhancer could have pierced it. Using the Eye of Reversal, Lee reads Cholsun's memories, discovering his abilities, items, and the hidden final dungeon. Suddenly, Cholsun laughs and, before Lee can react, launches poison toward Minsu, infecting him. Consumed by rage, Lee finishes Cholsun with a single punch, retrieving the poison skill stone from the corpse, and rushes to his friend, who begins to heal after absorbing it. Lee scolds Minsu for getting too close. When Minsu asks if the poison ability now belongs to him, Lee confirms it. Minsu thanks him, but Lee plays it down, telling him to prepare for future gates, as they'll need the equipment they contain. That day marks the death of Cholsun, once the most feared man in Korea. The next day, headlines across Korea declare the criminal of the century, Cholsun, dead and the General Guild's officers arrested. Reporters wonder who defeated the underworld leader. Lee reads the news as Minsu suggests, revealing the truth, as the public now views Cholsun's killer as a hero. Lee refuses, explaining that players who seek fame always meet tragic ends. In a world where everyone hunts for power, exposing his identity would invite danger. Many would covet his abilities or possess technology like the poison enhancer capable of killing him. He declares that when everything is over, he will build his own monument to record his achievements. Reading a comment asking about the Poison King's lost poison, he reflects that after death, only a person's skills and items are valued. Setting his sights forward, he declares his next objective, the unique class skill hidden in the level 50 silver armor dungeon. The records name it Assassin, and although he doesn't know its power, he believes that following his past path step by step will be the fastest way. A system alert shows his bonus points are still increasing, likely due to the knowledge gained from the General Guild. Since he was the only one who didn't reset, his growth mirrors that of a main story quest. He plans to collect key items and advance faster. Minsu, now stronger with the skill from Cholsun's poison and a bag of enhancers, can hunt by his side. Although destroying the factory limited their supply, it was the right decision. Minsu suggests using the alias Howler King for Lee's game account, remembering it as a legendary name from the past. Lee accepts and tells him to reach level 34 before their next dungeon. By January 29th, Minsu clears the level 34 Blue Pheasant dungeon, and Lee advances to level 37. Their rapid progress sparks rumors online. Some speculate that Howard King might be Lee's ally, while others insist that the great loner Lee never keeps companions. That night, Lee leans against a wall, talking to Minsu on the phone. Minsu praises the enhancers, saying the monsters melt before his poison. He plans to rest after one last run. Lee warns him not to underestimate his enemies and to call him when he's done. After hanging up, Lee reflects that it's been almost a month since the reset. Without resting, he has advanced quickly. Opening his status window, he allocates all his bonus points to agility, earning the title King of Agility and unlocking a new skill, Gravity Control. Testing it on a tree, he sets the weight to 100 tons, but the system rejects it. Lowering it to 2 tons, the tree collapses under the force, and he feels an overwhelming power. A warning appears. His actions will greatly affect the future. Just then, his phone rings. Minsu's panicked voice bursts through, shouting that a level 100 lichen has appeared. The call cuts off. Lee realizes that the system's warning was about this very moment. He rushes to Minsu's gate, knowing that the future he has been changing has finally begun to unfold. Minsu is already injured outside the level 38 gate, struggling to breathe. When Lee arrives, he immediately asks what happened. Minsu explains there's a level 100 monster inside, confused as to how such a beast appeared in a gate designed for level 38. Lee notices the deep wound on his arm, and Minsu admits that the blow never touched him, that just the wind tore his flesh. Suspecting the dungeon might contain an item of equivalent level, Lee heads towards the gate. Minsu begs him to stop, but Lee ignores him, enters the dungeon, and finds snakes with flames burning on their tails. Believing them to be the main threat, he crushes one with his foot and uses its body to knock down the rest. The ensuing silence makes him doubt Minsu's words, until a low growl breaks the air. A gigantic lichen emerges, wielding a scythe. Activating the Eye of God, Lee confirms it's a level 100 lichen, a result of the butterfly effect. The distorted future has arrived. The lichen attacks with its scythe, but Lee dodges and counters with brutal precision. He whips its face with the snake's body, but the beast barely flinches. When it unleashes its execution skill, Lee dodges again, closes the distance and slams it to the ground with a blow to the head. A flurry of attacks follows until the monster collapses, lifeless. The level up notifications flood his vision. His level rises to 62. Among the loot, he sees the lichen's greatsword with immense power, though locked by the level 100 requirement. Frustrated, he stores it and finishes carving up the creature before leaving the dungeon. Outside, the news hits him. Lichens are appearing all over the world, in New York, Tokyo, and beyond. The president of the World Player Association urges for global unity, while Bogard, America's top player, calls the crisis incomprehensible, watching as chaos unfolds. Lee admits the truth. It's his fault. His actions altered the future, summoning the lichens to this world. The president announces that no new gates will appear until the most powerful monsters are eliminated. Lee realizes this means the level 39 gates will remain sealed. Minsu feels a moment of relief, but Lee knows it only delays their progress. Looking away from the screen, he declares their next move. They will go to the airport. Their destination is Japan, where they are expected. Lee and Minsu arrive at the airport, with masks covering their faces. The receptionist informs them that all flights to Japan are cancelled due to the lichen outbreak. Minsu replies that he's already gotten the same answer from every airline. The receptionist, confused by their insistence, warns them to leave immediately, saying that not even the president can lift the ban and that they will die if they go. Lee moves to take off his mask. Since the airport is nearly empty, Lee removes it. The receptionists recognize him instantly, as Lee declares he must go to Japan to kill the lichen. The man hesitates but admits that even for him, it's dangerous. Lee sighs, takes out the lichen's greatsword, and drops it when it refuses to equip. The receptionist stares in disbelief, realizing Lee meant the World Player Association's private jet when he asked for a comfortable plane. With help from the Japanese government and the association, Lee and Minsu soon depart on a luxury flight. The calm of the journey quickly fades when Nami, a researcher, begins to explain the lichen's unbeatable defense. Lee cuts her off, asking to rest, but she insists it's for the good of humanity. Irritated, Lee dismisses her. Surprised, she admits no man has ever ignored her like this before, and reminds him that hundreds are fighting the lichen in Japan. When he asks how to make her shut up, she refuses, saying that humanity depends on him. Lee finds her words problematic and says he no longer wishes to fight, leaving her speechless. After the captain calls her to the cockpit, Lee finally gets some rest. But Nami soon returns with urgent news. The lichen has started summoning monsters from other dungeons to destroy cities. As the plane lands, they prepare to part ways. Minsu hugs Nami tightly, pretending to be a helpless orphan, while Lee reflects that she still doesn't know that he's a player. Nami promises they'll meet again and tells Lee to head to the Tokyo hotel, surrounded by skyscrapers. Lee nods and walks away with Minsu, who wishes the moment had lasted longer. Soon, they reach a gate shimmering with gray light. Lee observes it, realizing it's another result of the chaos caused by Le Khan. The city's destruction confirms Nami's information. Le Khan is opening gates and relentlessly releasing monsters. Minsu explains that the Japanese players are tracking him and waiting for the right moment to strike. He offers to contact them, but Lee refuses and points to the gate, deciding to handle it himself first. When fire serpents emerge, Lee wonders why the locals haven't eliminated them. Minsu explains that the gate opened ahead of schedule because of him. Lee reasons that, as long as the monsters remain, the gate will stay open. He orders Minsu to release poison at the front, while he handles the rest. As they fight, Lee gains bonus points from the butterfly effect and grows uneasy, recalling how he once caused a level 100 monster to appear in a level 38 dungeon. Suddenly, Minsu reports that Le Khan is heading toward them. Lee stops in surprise, wondering why it would come here. Minsu shows him live footage of Le Khan. The creature launches a powerful blast of energy at the cameraman. The man screams for help before the screen goes black. Moments later, an emergency broadcast spreads across the nation, calling all players to arms. The message warns that the country is on the brink of ruin and that the United States is considering a nuclear strike. The citizens plead for them not to do it, begging the heroes to protect them. Lee reacts with irritation, wondering why they would use a nuclear bomb on something he could easily crush. The scene shifts to the battlefield, where players are fighting Le Khan and its horde. Bullets and magic attacks fly, but the beast easily deflects them and counters with lethal slashes. The players shout orders, but their efforts are futile. One murmurs that if he were only level 60, things would be different. Another realizes that if Le Khan breaks through the defenses, the country will fall. Back with Lee, Minsu reports that the IAN has changed direction. It's now heading towards the nuclear plant, and disaster is less than an hour away. Lee grits his teeth, curses the beast, and decides to act. He pours his 1,545 bonus points into strength, raising his total to 5,852. As they advance, Lee asks Minsu, who had the highest strength before. Minsu recalls Bogard from the United States, who had about 15 points at level 658. Lee cuts him off, saying, "Those numbers don't mean anything anymore. The world has changed." They soon arrive at the battlefield, where exhausted players are barely holding the line. Explosions shake the ground. Lee observes the chaos and mutters that it's a total mess. Minsu points out that the nuclear plant is nearby, and that almost all the players from Japan have gathered there. Lee asks if the top Japanese players who cleared the final dungeon are present. He then scoffs, saying they surely fled. Minsu admits that Japan's representative disappeared after the reset, and Lee dismisses them all as useless. A player notices them and shouts something, but the language barrier leaves them confused. Lee jokes that maybe he asked about lunch, and Minsu laughs weakly. Then, Le Khan's mocking laughter echoes across the battlefield. Lee calls him clever for provoking them and orders Minsu to help the others while he takes care of the beast. Climbing a skyscraper, Lee observes the battle from above. Hundreds of players line the rooftops, launching attacks that light up the sky. Fireballs, arrows, and lightning rain down, shaking the city. Le Khan counterattacks, destroying buildings and scattering players. Their leader rallies them, raising a fireball and ordering a joint attack. The explosion kicks off a massive barrage that forces Le Khan to one knee. Cheers erupt, believing victory is near, but the creature rises in a rage. Le Khan raises its sword and prepares a devastating circular slash aimed at the skyscrapers. Despair floods the players as they realize the attack will annihilate them. From high above, Lee watches the destruction unfold and decides it's finally time to act, to intervene. He uses his petrification ability on the lichen, freezing it in place. The players watch in disbelief, recognizing the skill. One murmurs that it must be petrification, while another insists the King of Strength couldn't possibly be there. Lee jumps from the skyscraper, lands in front of the motionless beast, and gives it a light tap on the head. The lichen dies instantly, and his level rises several times. The players erupt in cheers, hailing Lee as their savior and king. Although he doesn't understand their words, Lee assumes they are praising him, draws his dagger, and checks the corpse, finding a glowing level 100 mana stone. Holding it, he remembers how mana stones replaced coal, and that their value depends on the monster's level. He tries to take the lichen's greatsword, but it disappears into his inventory. A system message reminds him that he can't equip it until he reaches level 100. Nami, watching from afar, comments that his arrogance wasn't unjustified. Lee tells her to prepare the jet, saying he'll take care of the Lycan in the United States as well. She informs him it was already destroyed with a missile in the desert. Lee nods, noting that their vast territory made it possible. Nami adds that the Emperor and Prime Minister of Japan wish to thank him, but he refuses the offer and focuses on scanning other players with the Eye of God. At the airport, a massive crowd gathers to welcome him, and reporters ask if he will face future monsters. Lee replies that it will depend on how the country treats him. He mentions that Japan treated him well, recalling how more people watched his battle than the Prime Minister's speech. After a brief exchange, he disappears with Minsu, using stealth. Nami calls him, saying the president of Korea is on his way. Lee replies to tell the president he's busy and that he will see him later. As he leaves, he reflects on the appearance of a special dungeon. Now, at level 71, he remembers that in the past, it appeared when his stats reached 4,000. His total now exceeds 15,000. However, the gate hasn't opened yet. He suspects it requires him to have used all his bonus points. After assigning them all to strength, he raises it to 8,757. The system confirms the opening of a special dungeon. Lee smiles, realizing he was right. The butterfly effect skill had triggered the event, but the gate's location remains unknown, and it will close in 30 seconds once found. Hearing Nami's persistent screams, he cancels his stealth and reappears. He asks, "Where is the president?" Inside the VIP room, the president greets him warmly and thanks him for representing the nation, adding that relations with Japan have improved thanks to him. Lee responds respectfully. The president admits he probably did the same in the past timeline and apologizes for not expressing his gratitude sooner. Lee assures him it's okay. The president reveals plans to reward him with a title higher than national merit, but Lee refuses, saying he has a request. He considers revealing the secret of the special gates, but decides against it for fear of interference. Instead, he reports that a special golden gate has opened. The president is stunned and demands confirmation. Lee explains that it's true and warns that a monster stronger than Elikin is inside. He adds that the gate closes 30 seconds after being discovered and must be found quickly. The president orders immediate action and promises full support. Lee notes that he has told only the truth, though he hides the part about the dungeon's rewards, wanting more than just the government's help. Finally, he asks the president to keep the matter secret and avoid making it public. In the control room of the National Crisis Management Office, Lee stands next to the president. The president comments that if Lee's words are true, then the Golden Gate could become as great a threat to Korea as Elikin was to Japan. Lee replies that, from his experience, the monster inside will be much stronger. An order is issued to search for the gate nationwide using cameras. Lin, the head of crisis management, raises a concern. If the gate closes in 30 seconds and a monster stronger than him appears, why not send other players? Lee insists that he must be the first to enter, explaining that the Golden Gate doesn't just contain a powerful monster, but it also grants rare rewards known as special skills and items. Lin finds this unbelievable, saying that over 100 players in the control room have traveled back in time, yet none have seen a dungeon like this. Lee admits that's why he hesitated to speak up, but he refuses to lie. Whether they believe him or not is their decision. Lin addresses the president, arguing that Lee's request suggests a monopoly. Keeping the quest secret would allow him to claim all the rewards, making him too powerful, like an uncontrollable weapon. The president asks for suggestions. Lin proposes banning Lee from entering dungeons and sending government players instead. Lee reflects bitterly that maybe he shouldn't have killed Lee Khan so quickly. He takes out Lee Khan's greatsword, which falls to the floor since he can't equip it yet. He comments that Korea had its own Lee Khan, and that, perhaps, leaving him alive would have made them understand the harshness of the world, where players fight endlessly for survival and power. Lee points to the sword and questions Lin directly. Monopolies are common, driven by instinct and ambition. He asks if that desire for power is a bad thing, but Lin remains silent. Lee turns to the president for judgment. The president agrees that if a dungeon doesn't belong to the government, they can't restrict entry. A monopoly is part of a player's ability. Lee asks if that means he can freely enter the special dungeon, since he received no reward for killing Lee Khan in Korea. The president nods. Lee declares he will take that special gate as compensation and claims the rights to all future ones. He then demands Lin's dismissal, arguing that as the head of crisis management, he should have supported strength, not feared it. The president calls for calm, but Lee insists, calling Lin's way of thinking pathetic. As the argument continues, satellites locate the special gate, and Lin is dismissed. Later, in the car, Lee comments that people only listen when he takes things to the extreme. Minsu admits everyone trembled when he spoke. Lee wonders why they never listened to him the first time. The gate is located in Socho, near the beach. Minsu reminds him to be cautious, even if he thinks nothing can harm him. Lee nods as they arrive at the forest, where the gate glows faintly. It's marked as a level A dungeon. Although they both find it suspiciously low, a system message then appears, announcing that the player who created the special gate is Lee. It warns that others can also get special abilities and surpass him. Knowing all players will see the message, Lee prepares to enter. As the 30-second countdown begins, his vision turns red. All stats restricted, all skills and items disabled. The shock bewilders him. A red goblin appears, laughing at the foolish human. He is the level 200 dungeon guardian. Lee realizes God's Eye cannot be activated. The goblin assures him not to fear, saying he isn't his real opponent. This dungeon isn't about fighting monsters, but something else. He tells him to do his best, curious to see what he can achieve, and reveals that Lee is famous in his dimension. Lee remains silent, wondering about this strange fame. He asks the red goblin if he finds this entertaining. The goblin acts scared and begs him to stop, but Lee finds the conversation useless. A system message appears, revealing this special level 2 dungeon isn't for hunting monsters. It instructs him to unlock an attribute to clear the dungeon. Lee chooses strength, reasoning that since he can't assess the situation, he can only guess. The goblin warns that choosing strength will make the challenge harder. Lee orders him to shut up, grabs his neck, and demands to know who the real opponent is. A new notification appears and Lee is transported to a vast desert where a tall tower stands. The system instructs him to claim the stat rune at the top. He assumes the rune increases attributes and regrets sparing the goblin. Inside, a spiral staircase ascends, and a timer appears. 18 hours until death. Panic grips him at the thought of dying without stats or skills. He begins to climb, but suddenly, arrows shoot from hidden traps, grazing his cheek. Soon, a boulder rolls down the stairs and forces him to retreat. Realizing that strength is useless here, he curses his choice, but pushes forward. Exhausted, he hides among fallen rocks at the base of the tower, breathing heavily. His body feels completely human. Climbing again seems impossible, but the timer still shows 16 hours remaining. As he leans against the wall, he notices the tightly stacked stone bricks, and a new idea occurs to him. The goal is to get the rune, not to climb. Destroying the tower might work. He lifts a large rock and hurls it against the wall. The stones crack, and the structure begins to collapse. In a matter of minutes, the entire tower comes crashing down. Among the rubble, levitating, is the strength stat rune that grants 2,000 points. Relief floods him as he picks it up and swallows it. The system announces that the dungeon has been completed and begins to transport him back. Upon reappearing, the red goblin watches him in disbelief, screaming that he destroyed the entire tower and that the rune was meant for another player. Trembling, it begs for its life, but he steps forward and eliminates it. A final notification appears, declaring the dungeon cleared and the gate closing in 3 minutes. He sits on his couch, reflecting that more than one special gate has opened. This means that another player now has the chance to surpass 1,000 points in an attribute. Someone has already reached that level without even advancing to level 300. Since some of his stats are still below 1,000, his king titles are not at risk, but he knows he must act. He opens his stat window and allocates 100 points each to mana and stamina. Mana rises to 1,853, and stamina to 1,990. The system grants him 2 new achievements, King of Mana and King of Stamina. Each title brings a new skill. Mana Restriction, which stops the flow of mana in an area for 5 seconds, while Blood Flow increases an enemy's circulation, causing more damage. Relief washes over him as he realizes that he can now manipulate stats at will. Then, a system warning appears, indicating that his actions are shaking the future. He frowns, not knowing what it means. At the American headquarters of the World Players Association, members discuss the new achievement. They agree it could only have been Lee. One mentions Gila, but she calmly says it's fine if it was him. Others discuss how he ignored their requests and even insulted them. Gila defends him, saying that those who know him know he's not a bad person. They confirm that Lee created the special gate, which means anyone can now get special abilities and rival him. Concern grows about someone so uncontrollable with so much power. Gila insists he's not dangerous, just unpredictable. They ask her about her own experience in the gate. She explains there were no monsters to hunt, just a tower with a rune at the top. A red goblin guided her, and without it, she would have died. Upon swallowing the rune, she gained 2,000 mana points. Hearing this, they realize Lee's achievements are even greater. Some warn he may have already completed multiple special gates. The group concludes that the association must take control of future gates. They order Gila to travel to Korea and monitor the reports. She understands they want her to surpass Lee, though she has no desire to do so. Meanwhile, Minsu explains to Lee that the association claims to serve the common good, but functions like a guild. Its members are elite players who choose fame over wealth, acting as a world army. The association manages access to dungeons and receives government funding. Lee understands their influence but knows there are hidden agendas within it. He asks about the player who cleared the United States gate. Minsu tells him it was Gila, known as the Witch, who controls mana through buffs and debuffs. She once held the title of Mana Queen, and now, after gaining 2,000 mana points from the tower, is challenging his position again. With more gates, she could match him, and news of her power is already spreading. Just then, Lee's phone buzzes with an emergency alert. A level 220 gargoyle has appeared in Bundangu, Sion, Nani, and Hongo. Citizens are ordered to evacuate, and a national emergency is declared. The creature with a human body, dragon wings, and fire breath is already destroying everything in its path. While driving to the scene, he speaks with the president. The president begs him for help, saying that 3 gargoyles have destroyed the Tech Valley, including the headquarters of major IT companies. Lee replies that he's already on his way and orders the president to clear the area. The president agrees but adds that rumors are spreading. People believe he created the special gates himself and caused the disasters. Lee laughs and says it wasn't some god who created the system. It also created the monsters. The president nods, but adds that people now think Lee summons monsters to become stronger. Lee admits there's some truth to that, but explains that if he really had that power, he would summon them right in front of his house. The president accepts his point and assures him the areas have been evacuated, wishing him luck. Lee reminds him that, in exchange for hunting the gargoyles, he wants to be informed first when the next special gate appears. The president asks if that's a condition for fighting, but Lee clarifies that it's a necessity. The president agrees and Lee ends the call as they approach the location. Lee parks and tells Minsu they will continue on foot. Minsu spots someone ahead and asks who it is. Lee observes and notes the president was supposed to have cleared the area. He calls out, and the woman responds, activating the Eye of God. He recognizes her stats and realizes it's Gila. She greets him warmly as Brother Lee, which surprises him. He takes her hand to confirm something and uses the Eye of Reversal to see her memories. He sees the Red Goblin helping her in the special dungeon, urging her to get stronger to kill him. Astonished, Lee mutters that the creature is pathetic and vows to find whoever created the game. He tries to look deeper into her memories of the final dungeon, seeing her injured, but urging him to finish the game. When he asks who hurt her, she resists and uses mana to block him. Amused by her ability, he lets it go and asks why she came. Gila admits she came to see him. Minsu warns Lee not to trust her. She turns to Minsu and teases him, saying she didn't know Lee had such a cute friend. Lee pressures her again for an answer. Gila smiles and says she still needs her as before. Lee challenges her to prove it, curious to see if she can. The tension feels strangely familiar. A loud crash interrupts them as 3 gargoyles appear. Lee asks if they have any weak points. Gila admits she doesn't know any. A gargoyle charges, and Lee quickly moves Gila and Minsu aside. The creature takes flight. Lee uses gravity control, fixing its weight at 2 tons, but nothing happens. At 3 tons, the creature groans, and at 4, it falls to the ground. Lee jumps on it, grabs its neck, and slams it into the ground as its screams echo through the air. Minsu and Gila watch as dust rises from the impact, obscuring the scene. The gargoyle soon emerges from the rubble, and Gila gasps in disbelief. Minsu calls for Lee, not knowing where he is. Lee comes out from the fallen stones, breathing heavily, admitting he almost died. He uses Petrify on the gargoyle, stabs its neck, and activates blood flow, causing it to collapse. Minsu realizes this is real. Lee has killed the gargoyle. Checking his stats, Lee sees his level rise from 71 to 93. Then he turns to the 2 remaining gargoyles. One spits fire, but Lee quickly dodges. The heat brushes past Minsu, who comments on its intensity. Unable to stand by, Gila steps forward and casts buffs, increasing Lee's strength by 200. Lee looks amused at her effort. As Minsu warns the gargoyles are attacking again, Lee activates his armor, and the system notifies him his skills have been strengthened thanks to concentrated mana. He jumps high, grabs both gargoyles by the neck, and slams them to the ground, killing them instantly. Gila reminds him she has supported him like this before. When he questions her, she frowns and says he never changes. Before he can respond, The president calls to thank him for saving the country. Lee assumes he saw everything live, and the president confirms it. Lee tells him to share the locations of the special gates through the Crisis Management Office. A system notification appears for all three. The president reports that one has opened. A new special gate. Lee furrows his brow, wondering why the system gave no warning, and suspects the god behind it seeks to test or destroy him. Gila reads the message aloud. The gate appeared due to Lee's overwhelming strength in Gangu, and she asks to join him, promising not to interfere. Lee asks her why she wants to follow him. Gila says she came to Korea for him and refuses to obey the World Player Association. She insists that she decides her own path. Lee agrees on the condition that she shares all the information she receives. She promises she will do anything for him. Minsu mutters that her buffs are useful, but questions her intentions. Gila replies that she must save the world and end the game. Minsu doubts her words, but she insists her motive is personal. She reminds Lee that he once said players would rule the world after the game's end. Lee admits he doesn't remember, and she smiles, saying those words now guide her. Lee shakes his head, realizing he might have inspired something dangerous. Still, he smiles slightly as they return to the car together. Lee, Minsu, and Gila stand before the special dungeon gate. It's a level 3 dungeon, limited to 2 players with high difficulty. Lee notices the change and approaches. Gila asks if she should join, but he shakes his head, warning it could be dangerous. She agrees and watches as he enters alone. Inside, a red goblin awaits and, upon seeing Lee, recognizes him and reacts nervously. Lee senses something is wrong and demands to know what it's hiding. The goblin hesitates, so Lee activates God's Eye, revealing its true power. Level 300 with all stats at 3000. Grabbing the goblin's head, he forces it to explain. Panicking, the goblin reveals the dungeon's objective is to block monsters coming through the underground tunnels. Lee listens as it explains the setup. He must stop the creatures from crossing the ravine. Lee listens as it explains the setup. He must stop the creatures from crossing the ravine. When he asks what kind of monsters, the goblin admits they are gargoyles of level 220. Hearing this, Lee remembers killing 3 that very day and grabs the goblin, telling it not to lie. As he walks away, the goblin asks if he's really alone. Lee confirms it, and the system announces the mission has begun. Survive for 3 hours, or die. Lee jumps into the ravine while the goblin mocks him from above, confident his death is certain. Soon, a swarm of gargoyles appears. Using gravity control, paralysis, and petrification, Lee dodges their attacks and crushes them with ease. He drains their blood using blood flow and levels up again. Before he can rest, a second wave arrives. Instead of fear, a smile spreads across his face as he readies himself for more. The red goblin warns Gila to leave, but she refuses, saying she's also a player. Ignoring its protests, she jumps down to join Lee. When he asks why she followed him, she admits she had a bad feeling. He asks about Minsu, and she assures him that he stayed outside. Her arrival strengthens Lee's abilities as the mana flow concentrates, reducing the dungeon's difficulty. Lee looks around in disbelief as the gargoyles suddenly transform into goblins. Frustrated, he punches the ground, killing them all instantly. He realizes someone is manipulating the dungeon, testing his limits. Gila notices his tense expression and asks what's wrong, but he brushes it off. When she offers to take care of the red goblin, Lee silently acknowledges her loyalty, realizing she might have been his ally in a past life. Later, Lee confronts the red goblin again, gripping its head tightly. Trembling, it insists it was just following orders. Lee's tone hardens as he demands to know who gave those orders. Losing patience, Lee listens to the red goblin plead for its life, promising to reveal the truth if spared. It explains that its god controls the game channel. Lee asks if it's really a god, and the goblin insists it is, claiming it watches everything inside the game. Lee scoffs and curses, knowing the god must be watching. The goblin admits the god intervened because he broke the game's balance. Lee frowns, pointing out that they were the ones who did it. Like that. The goblin pleads ignorance, saying he only followed orders to increase the dungeon's difficulty. Just then, Gila steps forward and says he can meet the god in the final dungeon. Lee looks at her curiously. She explains that this god is the one who created the entire game. A system notification confirms that. Lee has cleared the level 3 special dungeon and receives 3000 bonus points. He asks if they'll have to fight that god, and Gila nods. He wonders if the god is human, but she admits she's never seen him. When he asks who killed her before, she names Park Musun. Hearing the name, Lee orders her to stay still, and activates the Eye of Reversion to see her memories. In her memories, Musun stands before her, mocking her weakness. Without Lee, he calls her a witch, shatters her skills, and stabs her as she falls, thinking she must warn Lee. Lee freezes the vision and asks what she wanted to tell him. Gila then replies that he can already see it. When pressed, she admits that Musun had a sword skill that could pierce her armor, though she doesn't know how. Before Lee can ask more, a system warning appears, stating the gate will close in 3 minutes. Outside, Gila checks her status window in disbelief. Realizing the points are real, Lee distributes his bonus points into strength, raising it above 21,000. Minsu complains of dizziness, and Gila suggests their stats might be affecting their bodies. Lee tests his power, activates his armor, and punches the ground, leaving a deep crater. A notification appears. The armor has evolved to level 3, unlocking Final Strike, a skill that absorbs excess power and unleashes it at the cost of most of his health. Minsu panics, urging him to stop before he collapses the area. Lee studies the skill and mutters that it's useless, unless he faces someone who can truly challenge him. Soon, news spreads of a player surpassing 1,000 stat points in a month. Analysts declare, the world has changed, and new strategies are needed. Lee reads the headlines and laughs, hoping stronger players will finally emerge as special gates appear all over the world. Players grow faster and hunt more powerful monsters. Seeing this, Lee decides to pause his dungeon raids, allowing others to catch up. The faster they grow, the more the world evolves, and the greater his own rewards become. However, a thought lingers in his mind. Park Musun, Lee, and Gila stand in front of the statues. Lee notices that Park Musun's statue is smaller and covered in graffiti. It has never been updated since it was built. Lee contacts the president to complain about the statues in Wangguaman Square. He argues that his statue should be moved because he hasn't achieved feats like Admiral Junin or King Sehong. The president reminds him that he saved the world. But Lee insists his actions were for personal gain, making the statue embarrassing. The president explains that it was chosen by a national vote, declaring Lee a hero, but Lee still demands it be moved. The president reluctantly agrees. Lee then asks about removing Park Musun's statue before the president can answer. Lee destroys it. He explains that the act is being broadcast live, so Musun will see his reputation ruined and be forced to abandon his false hero image. Lee tells the president to place his statue in front of Musun's house. The Blue House reacts quickly, broadcasting the footage nationwide. The public is shocked, wondering why Musun remains silent. They remember his former power, but notice his absence now. Gila explains that Musun became a player only 5 years before the final dungeon appeared, rising to the top in that short time. Most believe that becoming a player happens by finding a gate, or by obtaining mana from monsters. Lee realizes that Musun has not yet awakened in this timeline. Minsu says, this is good news, and Lee agrees. Musun must face strong monsters to become a player again. This gives Lee time to prepare. When Musun awakens, Lee plans to either kill him instantly or brand him as a traitor, forcing him into hiding. Lee contacts the president again, asking him for an article that portrays Musun as the worst man in history, hidden behind a hero's mask. Is he sure that Musun will remain silent after that? Elsewhere, a red goblin forces stat stones down a gargoyle's throat, promising it the power to kill Lee. He considers keeping some for himself, but decides the gargoyle is his only hope. If it kills Lee, it will lead all the monsters. Meanwhile, other players continue to clear gates, indirectly helping Lee, who is waiting for the level 51 gate in Korea that grants the assassin class ability. Ying suggests that he rest, and Ninso agrees. A system warning appears, indicating that his actions are greatly altering the future. Lee leans back, bewildered. Kale asks him about it, and he replies that another level 200 monster is about to appear. Suddenly, a gate opens, a level 51 silver armor gate, swarming with struggling players. Gila warns that there's no time to rest. Lee smirks, saying that today they will achieve 2 goals. As the gargoyle-like figure appears and the battle begins, the monster lands with force, shaking the ground. Lee instantly summons his armor and lunges into the attack. The creature growls and catches both of Lee's arms in its grip. Lee flinches, then activates God's Eye. The scan reveals the monster is level 230, with stats far above normal. He turns to Minsu and Gila, asking what the values should be. Gila replies that they shouldn't exceed 3,000. Minsu warns him not to waste time and to finish it quickly, reminding him that hesitation brings curses. Lee mutters in disbelief as he reads over 20,000 total stats. Gila freezes, unable to process the number. Lee grabs the monster by the neck and slams its face into the ground, but it gets up again. Lee uses Petrify, but the effect lasts barely 3 seconds before it shatters. He realizes his ability might be too weak against such high stats. The gargoyle attacks with immense force. Lee dodges as Minsu recognizes the move, noting that it had never been so powerful. Gila senses the immense mana surrounding them and warns Lee to stay alert. Lee grabs his head again, slamming it repeatedly against the ground until he finally collapses. He levels up several times. Catching his breath, Lee wonders if the creature had absorbed stat runes. Minsu points out they entered the gate immediately, so no one else could have altered it. Lee agrees, realizing that something strange is happening again. Gila, alarmed, asks how a level 230 monster could have over 20,000 in stats. She asks Lee where his power truly comes from and if he is the one creating the special gates. Lee admits that it's partially true. He activates the gates, but he doesn't create them. As they talk, Lee takes out his dagger and cuts open the monster's body. Inside, he finds several stat stones. To confirm, he feeds one stone to the silver-armored monster and scans it again with the Eye of God. When he detects a stat rune inside it, the truth becomes clear. Lee smirks and curses the Red Goblin, knowing exactly who is behind this.